So what you want to do is go through and create all of these primitives, draw them in from your top view, and then select each one of them with the Select and Move tool. Go to your Modify tab up here and make adjustments to its parameters to start getting comfortable with what they do. What happens if I stretch this? What happens if I move that? What happens if I do both of them? And start to get comfortable with those primitives. So I'm going to come File, Reset, and it's going to reset. It's going to give me an error message, and you can save it, cancel, or don't save. Do you really want to reset? And yes, and then it just takes me back to the default. So when you've gone through these standard primitives and have gotten comfortable with them, the next thing you want to work with is pull down this menu up here, which says standard primitives, that arrow, and go to extended primitives. And you're going to see you have more. And these are more basic primitives that you can use. My favorite one of these is a capsule. I think that's just cool. Oops. And they all have, just like the standard primitives, the extended primitives also have the ability to make changes to all of their parameters. That was too many. Just play around with those a little bit, get comfortable with them, and try applying some of the modifiers. Angles what you want to bend with. See what kind of interesting shapes you can get. Obviously we need more segments in here for this to bend properly. And you just get comfortable with this by practicing and playing around with it in the system until it becomes second nature. And that's literally how your brain works. So I read books by neurobiologists to understand the brain. And essentially, in the beginning, when you're learning something new, one of the reasons it's hard and exhausting, and sometimes people say they get headaches when they're trying to learn too much at the same time. And I remember being a college student having a lot of headaches for trying to learn new information. And it's because you're using up a lot of energy. Your brain is an energy hog. We need to consume complex carbohydrates from fruits and vegetables to feed our brain because it runs off complex carbohydrates. It will run off carbohydrates, but the complex ones have nutrients in them and they're healthier. So you need to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables to get the energy that your brain needs, because you're going to consume a lot of energy in what is considered conscious thought. You are focused on learning. You can't, I mean, people think they can multitask. Nobody can really multitask. You can switch between one thing and the other, but you lose in between. And some people, once you get really good at doing stuff, you can manage multiple things a little better. But in the beginning, you really have to focus that concentrated, conscious thought. Your attention has to be on the thing that you're learning, and you have to do it quite a few times. Eventually, what happens is your conscious brain will send that information to your unconscious brain, which is the powerhouse. The conscious brain can handle about 50 bits of information per second. The unconscious brain processes about 11 billion bits of information per second. It's the supercomputer of your brain. So once the conscious brain puts the information in enough times that the conscious brain has finally learned it, then you start operating unconsciously. And because it's a supercomputer, you don't spend as much energy in that secondary unconscious thought as you do in conscious thought. So that's why in the beginning this is very difficult. I'm throwing new terminology at you. I'm throwing a new way of thinking at you. I'm throwing math at you, which some of you guys had geometry in high school but didn't really use a whole lot outside of your assignments. Well, this is applied geometry and algebra and fractions and all other sorts of Boolean operations, which we're going to get to next. And so you've got all these new things, and it's a lot like I said earlier, learning Greek or Russian or Chinese. And I have been to every one of those countries and remembered how hard it was to try to understand what was going on at that time. And this is a lot like that. You're putting in a lot of conscious energy and a lot of conscious thought in the beginning. Around midterm, you'll start to get the hang of this, and it will become easier. And I have shared some stuff with you guys in the Blackboard course shell from previous semesters, what students had created for their assignments. So you can see, some of the first models and their final projects where they ended up in the course. And students end up in this program for about a year. And by the time that year is up, you're speaking 3D Studio Max as well as fluently as you're speaking English. So just have to hang in there, and it does get easier. Okay, so we're going to continue in the next video. I want you guys to practice with these primitives, the standard primitives. Whoops, I'm still in the modify tab. The standard primitives and the extended primitives, and then modifying them, moving them, scaling them, rotating them, and applying modifiers and playing around with those. Get comfortable with that, learn what those things do, and we're then going to use this as a basis for creating characters. And I will very quickly show you speed modeling. Make sure I don't run out of time here. And they started with a cube. Now it's speed, so it makes it really hard to see. But they started with a cube. You could start with a capsule. And they use that then to model and to create this character. And so we will be doing the same thing. We're just going slow in the beginning because of all the different new parts and pieces to this that I'm throwing at you. It's really important, though, that you practice every single day with this so that you can get it to go from conscious to unconscious thought. And the sooner you get that in your unconscious thought, the easier it becomes, because you're going to be constantly taking in new information consciously. And the sooner you can move that stuff into your unconscious, the less your conscious is having to manage at one time. Because it's just, 50 bits of information and that's it. Okay, so that's where we are for now, and we will pick up in the next video.